up, everyone? Matt here, and welcome to another episode of Down Once More with Rayleigh and Matt, but just Matt today. First off, welcome to another mini episode. I have a few housekeeping things, and we're going to get into some mini reviews. It's going to be a mini review mini episode, so buckle up. If you're not interested in some of these, go to the time codes. They're in the episode description of everything, so you feel free to jump around. We want you to enjoy what you listen to. So I want to say, if you haven't already listened to Rayleigh and I's episode from last week, the November 8th episode titled Matt and Rayleigh Get Probed, I highly encourage you to go stop this one. Don't listen to this one. And go watch that one on YouTube or listen to it if you need to. There's a lot of fun things tucked in the YouTube one, especially at the end. So I recommend that. I encourage it. So go do that. Then come back here and check this one out. Next week is our review of Newsies. So the 92, we talk about the 1992 version and the 2017 Broadway version. So those are both on Disney Plus. If you're boycotting or canceled Disney Plus because they're getting ready to do a rate hike, I get it. You can find the soundtracks for both those on Apple Music, Spotify, any of that, wherever you listen to your musicals and soundtracks. So December, holidays coming up. Things are going to be crazy busy. We're still planning on releasing an episode a week, so don't worry about that. We may not get the joint ones as much as in December. So for all the updates and to know what's coming down the pipeline, follow us on Instagram. So we have the Twitter, the X page. That's going to be dying soon just because I do a shitty job updating it. So I apologize, but Instagram, we can interact more. We can do reels. We can do polls. We can do all that fun stuff. I know you can do some of that stuff on X as well. But go follow us on Instagram or just subscribe to us on YouTube. Turn on notifications. You get notified whenever anything gets live. You can help us hit our subscriber goal. So that's what I recommend. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on YouTube. Turn those notifications on. And if you're feeling frisky and you want to show us that you're enjoying what we're putting out, leave us reviews on Apple Music, Spotify, comment on the videos, share, follow, all that fun stuff. Download on Apple Music and Spotify. Those are the stats that we can get. We can't just get listens, but we can see how many people download it. So if you're a listener, if you enjoy what we're putting out, let us know. We appreciate the feedback. So go do that. December. Don't know what movie we're going to do yet. We'll post on our Instagram when we have it figured out which one's coming down the pipeline. We're going to try to do a holiday one. Last year we did Spirited, the Ryan Reynolds and Will Ferrell Apple TV Plus musical. That was a lot of fun. So we have a review of that out. If you're interested, if you watch that and want to get in the holiday spirit, go check out our review for that. So now for the first mini review, I'm going to talk about the Mean Girls, the musical movie trailer. So they dropped that this past week. This movie was originally it's an adaptation of the Broadway an adaptation. I did that in the book to movie draft too. It's adaptation, not adaptation. They did the adaptation of the original Lindsay Lohan and Rachel McAdams movie. They turned that into a Broadway show. Tina Fey produced it. She starred in the original movie and produced that as well. And then they did the Broadway version. It was met with a lot of success, and so now they're doing a movie version of the Broadway musical. It was originally going to be a Paramount Plus movie, and then they pivoted and now it's releasing in theaters on January 12th. That, to me, is a really good sign that they feel really good about what they filmed, what they have put together, and they think they're going to be able to draw an audience, and they're going to find the crowd and have some box office success. I'll tell you what, from this first trailer, I'm really loving what I'm seeing so far. I'm loving this cast. We got our first glimpses of Ali'i Carvalho as Janice, Jaquel Spivey as Damien, Anne Guri Rice as Katie, and Renee Rapp as... why now am I blanking on her name? Regina George. That's a faux pas, party foul on my part for forgetting her name. It's been a really long week. But Renee Rapp, I'm so pumped to hear her sing and see her perform in this. You can watch on YouTube some performances of her doing World Burns and Someone Gets Hurt. and she is going to crush us. Really excited to see that. I'm not familiar with the actresses playing the other plastics, but looks like they have the right energy for the roles. It looks like a good time. I thought it was an interesting choice not to use one of the songs from the musical in the trailer. They have an Olivia Rodrigo song playing in the background. And I get it. You want to have like a fun pop anthem that people are kind of familiar with. And you just have the scenes going in the background, especially for your first like supercut trailer that things are getting put together. You can see glimpses of musical numbers, so they're not shying away from telling you it's going to be a musical in the trailer. But I think this musical just has a lot of fun songs, and I would have liked seeing one of those in the trailer. But the things that jumped out to me initially, and there could be more, I didn't analyze this trailer in depth, but we saw glimpses of it looked like it roars. In the trailer, and then we also got Sexy and World Burns. Those are ones that like I recognize these set pieces. I recognize those numbers. I think those are going to be really fun sequences, and it's going to be a really fun movie overall. So really pumped about that. Tina Fey and Tim Meadows are reprising. I can't talk today either, apparently. They're reprising their roles from the movie in this as well. I don't have a problem with that, but I think people are already, who aren't like tuned in or aren't big musical fans, are already like, why are we doing a remake of this? And you're not distancing yourself at all by keeping some of those same cast members. So I think that's an interesting choice. I don't know if I necessarily love that choice, but they're both great actors, so it'll be good. It'll be good. That's what I'm telling myself. I'm really excited for this movie, though. And no, I don't think it's releasing on Paramount Plus same day. I'm guessing it'll probably do like a 6-week theater window and then pop over on Paramount Plus. Maybe they'll space it out more. I'd highly encourage people, if this even somewhat interests you, to go see it in theaters. I think the more we show out and the more we go see musicals in theaters, the more will get produced. Some might be cash grabs that could suck, but still do it. More musicals in theaters is a good thing, in my opinion. All right, pivoting. Next trailer, not trailer. That's the only trailer I'm talking about. That's the only musical trailer we've released. I will give one note. I watched, and this isn't a mini review. This is just a blurb. I watched Dix the Musical recently. It's now out on video on demand. I don't remember if I mentioned it here or not. It was A24, the production company, who they put out some of the best horror movies, in my opinion. They let some directors just do their own thing. They have a lot of really like weird movies in general, but they have some of the more original movies out there. They give directors a chance with smaller budgets and freedom to kind of have free roam. They did Bodies, 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 which I thought was really good. They didn't do Brightburn. I'm trying to think of the Midsummer is the one I'm thinking of. Hereditary. They did Talk to Me, which we talked about on here, which I thought was great. And this was their first movie musical. It was original movie musical. It has Nathan Lane, Megan Mullally, Megan Thee Stallion in it, and some other cameos towards the end. And we'll probably talk about it on here at some point, so I'm not going to go in depth. I can't decide if I really enjoyed this movie or if I have no clue what the fuck I watched. It is so over the top at some points, but it does some things I really liked. It's definitely not going to be for everyone. So we'll see. It may just be a blip on here. This might be the only time it's talked about on the podcast, but is an interesting one. I'd say wait till it's cheaper for rental. I bought it on video on demand. Don't think it's worth a buy. So there's my 2 cents. But now we're going to a classier musical in Titanic the Musical. So if there are people who are a fan of this musical, when I mentioned it before, they're probably screaming at their computer, TV, headphones, phone, however you're listening to it, when I said that it's a 1980 musical. I will say, in my defense, on Apple Music, the musical album says 1980 on it. So that's not completely on me. But in all reality, I did a little bit of homework now since I knew nothing about it going into seeing the movie at the theater. But it premiered in 1997. So the same year that James Cameron's movie came out. It has nothing to do, well, besides the obvious Titanic. It is not a musical adaptation of the movie. It's its own thing, its own storylines, its own characters. Came out in 1997. It earned 5 Tonys, one of which was Best Musical. And like I said, I didn't know anything about this going into it, except that it was about the Titanic. And by now, we're all somewhat familiar with the story of Titanic. It launched, it had some issues, it hit an iceberg, a lot of people died. That's the gist of it. The poorer people, a lot more of them died because they were down below, and there were issues with that. The musical, it tries to tackle a lot of the different classism that was going on at the time. The first class passengers being the most important, being separated from even the second class and then the third class passengers, which were just basically viewed as garbage by most of the crew and the head people, not necessarily the captain, but the owner, Mr. Usher. He's painted as the villain in this. The musical opens up with him singing a number about Titanic, kind of reflecting on what happened, and then it goes into the launching of the Titanic. In my opinion, this has one of the weakest opening numbers of a musical that I have ever seen. For me, it did not do anything to get me excited about what I was about to watch. It is not, I get this is not an upbeat story, but it wasn't catchy. There was a lot of singing what should be spoken dialogue, which I get. It's a musical, especially of that time. That's what was common. But there's probably like 7,000 heads of lettuce, Titanic. And I'm like, what? Why? Like, I get they're trying to capture the scale, the scope of what was going on, what all went into it, all the provisions, how large it was, everything like that. But there were so many sung lines of dialogue in it that I'm like, it's not a completely sung through musical, but then there's parts where it's treated like it is, and I'm like, what is happening? I don't know. It was disjointed for me in that regard. The first act especially was very slow, and there is so much going on that in my mind I don't connect with any of the storylines or any of the people going on. What we go back and forth to a lot is we get a lot of the captain, we get a lot of Mr. Ursay, the owner, and their dialogue and their point of view. They're the characters we spend the most time with, and so they're the ones that you not necessarily empathize with, but that you build that bond with more. There's characters from each of the different classes. There is an Irish woman who, in the opening song, sings about how she saw that man. She's going to make him her husband because he was good looking. Then she has, there's spoilers throughout this, by the way. I didn't give an official spoiler warning. But if you're going to watch Titanic the Musical, I mean, you already know the boat sinks. But if you don't want to know specific plot details of the musical, fair warning. But then there's a song with she's in third class. And there's a song with all the third class people singing. And you reveal she's pregnant. She's traveling to America on her own. She's got the life of her and her baby. And then there's a second class couple, Alice, and I'm blanking on his name because I was in the theater. I wasn't taking notes as I watched this. I took notes afterwards when I sat in my car before I left. Some minor ones. Alice and her husband, they have, I want to say the last name was Bean. They are in second class. She is very ambitious, wanting to move on. She wants to interact with first class people, rub shoulders with them. She wants her husband, who has a hardware store. She wants him to rub shoulders with them and the storyline is she's wanting more out of life and not just being content with where they're at and moving forward and all this ambition. And he's just content with where he's at. And she views it as him not having much ambition. I had a problem with this storyline. I'll get to in a little bit. And then in the first class, there's not really a couple there. There's an older couple. They're the ones that we get the most amount of time with, but it's even not that much. They're the first class couple that are older. They've been married, I think they say like 50 years, something like that. And so each of these characters, these story points, they really only have one, maybe two songs telling their story throughout. In my opinion, you don't spend enough time with them to really care or connect with a specific group enough that the finale, the ending, is impactful. Another caveat I'll add here, I had a very loud, annoying 5-year-old 2 seats over from me that was very distracting throughout this experience. So that could be part of it too. But for me, the first act drug, and there was nothing that really grabbed me, connected, interested me. The second act, so the first act ends with them hitting the iceberg. That's where the first act concludes. And then it goes into the anticipation. I felt like right leading up to the intermission in the end of the first act, the dread that was happening where they're about to hit the iceberg, everything leading up to that, I thought was super well done at how that built. And I also want to add, I said I didn't love this. I didn't really love any of the musical numbers in it. Like, no songs from this will be making my playlist. But it is a very technically well done production and well written musical. Some of the score, there were notes of, especially the opening number, had notes of Sweeney Todd, the overture for Sweeney Todd for some reason, was what was just popping in my head. And there were certain progressions that were just hitting me with Sweeney Todd, some Sondheim vibes. But I thought they did a really good job building the dread. And I thought the second act was much better than the first act, even though it's a huge downer. Obviously, you have all the people dying. You have the captain being okay with just shutting off third class down, closing them off so they can't get up to the lifeboats because they know they don't have enough lifeboats for everyone. But I don't know. I didn't love it. Even if this was available to stream, I don't see myself watching this again. I don't know why my camera's autofocus is refusing to focus right now. If you're watching on YouTube, apologies. But I don't know. The music style, this is not my vibe music. We talked about that a little bit at Chicago. That's not really, like, I prefer the modern musicals more. I will say too, I felt like a fraud in this musical because at the intermission, there's a group of 5 people that were analyzing everything about it and talking in depth. And I'm like, I'm a shit musical reviewer because I just go off vibes. And if there's something that connected to me through it. I said I was going to talk about the beans a little more, the second class passengers that we focused on. Alice, I feel like the writers of the musical and the directors, their intention was to make her kind of the heroine and making her the person that's constantly striving for more and fighting against the oppression, the classism, and wanting to push and break those barriers between second class and first class and wanting to get there. I felt how she came across. Like, it's talked about her husband has a successful hardware store. They're content. They're happy. He's trying to do some of what she wants. Like, he's like, hey, you wanted to see the world. I took you on this trip on the Titanic because that's what you wanted. But she wants more. She wants more than that. And she's constantly pushing and just not satisfied. And I felt like they towed the line and borderline crossed it of making this character seem almost unlikable and almost spoiled instead of just ambitious and someone filled with aspirations. I don't know. Maybe that was just me. Maybe it was because my whole vibe and mood and everything was thrown off because of all the distractions in the theater and everything. But I didn't love that character and what they did with her. So I don't know. I feel like they told the story of Titanic well. They told the story of the owner, Mr. Ursay, just kind of being the taskmaster and just pushing the captain, pushing more and more about the timeline and the speed, and which kind of caused the captain to take the faster route, which was the path where the northern route where the iceberg ended up being and everything like that. So they bookend it with the songs with Ursay singing. And it's like some of the lyrics are something like, at once a poem and the perfection of mechanical engineering. And then they like repeat that. And I'm like, what are we doing here? Titanic the Musical, not for me. So overall, I mean, I give it 3 out of 5 stars still. Like, it was very well done. It is a musical. I'm glad we're seeing more film Broadway versions get made, get put out there. I don't know. It might be popping up on Broadway HD at some point because it said it was filmed and produced in partnership with Broadway HD. I don't know. I have that subscription service, but again, their UI, their app, and not having a smart TV app or even Xbox, PlayStation, anything like that sucks. So it's not the most user-friendly to watch. It's your laptop or the phone app, and you can't even cast it. But they're doing what they can too at putting out those film Broadway versions, so I feel like I should support them. All right. Next up is this is going to be a lot briefer of a review. Is I talked a few episodes back about binge watching some Netflix shows because going to cancel some things. I watched Mike Flanagan's Midnight Mass. Thought it was fantastic. His best series yet. And so I just finished watching The Fall of the House of Usher. This series, as a lot of the ensemble casts that his shows always have, it brings in Mark Hamill playing kind of a villain in it. I'm not going to get any detailed spoilers or anything, but just his character is a lawyer, so do with that as you will. It is a very loose adaptation of Edgar Allan Poe's short stories and works, and each episode is the title of a different Poe short story. The Fall of the House of Usher is a Poe short story, but they do not follow it very closely. A lot of the themes of Poe's writing in general and those particular and specific short stories are pulled into the episode and the series overall. You've got a lot of the character names as well that are being duplicated. And I thought just the message, the spirit, the heart of all those things is there. And this might actually top Midnight Mass. And maybe all this is just recency bias. But I thought this was a fantastic series. If you have Netflix, it's a little more gory and violent than some of his previous ones. It also has episode 2. It has a little more sexual content and nudity. So if that's something that bothers you, I don't know why you're listening to this podcast, but if it is, just be aware of that. There's a lot more sexual undertones throughout this series than some of his other ones, but it is very well done, tastefully done, a fantastic series. I think it sucked. It's still one of Netflix's most watched series, but it sucks that it was released during the strike, and so the actors didn't get to promote it as much and talk about it as much. So Mark Hamill, this is one of his best live action performances, I feel like. There's some people like, oh man, surprised to see Mark Hamill in this kind of role. A lot of his voice acting work, especially as Joker in a lot of the Batman projects, he has that more sinister quality and everything. The other standout, Carla Gugino, is fantastic in this as well. Everyone is. It is fantastically cast and acted, as all of Flanagan's projects are, but highly, highly recommend you check out The Fall of the House of Usher. It's 8 episodes, about an hour long each, so you can blow through it pretty quickly. The last mini review I'm going to do here will also be a little bit more brief, just because I'm not as educated on it. But I saw yesterday, I went to go see Killers of the Flower Moon, the new Martin Scorsese movie. It was done with both Paramount and Apple Films. So it will be premiering on Apple TV Plus shortly. But I think supporting these kinds of movies and films in theaters is great. Some more original ones. It is based on a novel of the same name with the added the Osage murders and the birth of the FBI. It's Killers of the Flower Moon. And the book is written by David Gran. And Martin Scorsese, at the beginning, before the film starts, he talks about this is a story that he's wanted to tell for a while, and how he worked very closely with Osage people when he was making the movie, because he wanted to make sure it was faithful and respectful of their story and everything they went through. And this was, like, I'll be honest, this was something I was not very familiar with. I did not know the history behind it. So I was very interested and really enjoyed this movie. It's a little over 3.5 hours long. I didn't feel like it seemed like that long. It moved pretty quickly. That being said, it is a lot more of a drama than I was expecting. Not quite as much as Oppenheimer. Actually, may rival Oppenheimer on that. But these were both very interesting, intriguing stories that were longer, didn't feel as long as they actually are, that are just beautifully written, shot, directed, acted. I've seen a lot of people praising DiCaprio in this. I thought he did a good job, but Robert De Niro and Lily Gladstone were actually kind of the standouts to me in it. We've got Jesse Plemons, Brendan Fraser in there as well. A great cast all around. And it's telling the story of how in like the 1920s, and there was oil found in Oklahoma in the Osage Nation. A lot of the Osage people, they got wealthy, but then there were people just trying to take advantage of them. And the specifically story this tells is murders around one person's family, trying to get their land and property. And just, you see how really, like, especially minor spoilers, how De Niro's character, he comes across as a good guy and a nice guy, and like how he's everyone's friend and he's trying to do things for the best of them. But he's one of the more sinister villains that I've seen in a movie this year. He does a fantastic job in this. I think it's one of his best performances personally. And I don't know. I did think, especially with the novel, I've not read the novel. It's based on a true story too. I don't know if I mentioned that, but this is a true story. And the novel had the kind of subtitle of it also being about the birth of the FBI. Yes, that's a very small part of this movie. I don't know if it's more prevalent in the novel or not. I would have kind of liked to see a little bit more of that fleshed out. I felt like it kind of rushed in the third act of the movie. There's a lot of establishing time to build up the characters, the story, the history, the culture in the first act and second act. And then the third act I felt like did seem rushed. I think there were rumors of there being like a 4-hour cut of this. And I could see that easily, especially with how quickly the third act moves and how they kind of wrap things up. I wish they would have spent some more time. I don't know. I'm not Scorsese. I'm not an editor. I don't know. There's not really anything I would have cut. And I get you can't just release a 4+ hour movie in theaters, but the end did just feel a little rushed for me. But it was a very sad story, but a very interesting story, a story I think a lot more people need to know. And that just kind of like the history behind Juneteenth and the Tulsa bombings and everything like that was something that I was very uneducated on growing up. And that could just be something because I'm a white guy in the Midwest. But it's just these horrific tragedies and murders and things like that not enough people know these stories and they just get forgotten. And I'm super glad Scorsese and those H people, they worked together and they got this story made into a movie. I'm glad it's seeing the commercial success that it is. I feel like it's one of Scorsese's best ones yet. So highly recommend. And it's not as gory or graphic as I was expecting. I know Scorsese's movies, they typically have a lot of violence and grit in them. And this one has some with the murders, but how it's all done, I feel like was very tasteful, respectful, and I thought it was really good. So, Killers of the Flower Moon, still in theaters. If you have the opportunity, I think it's worth a watch in theaters. Just make sure that the Taylor Swift concert movie is not going on next door to you. I looked that up before I got tickets. I'll be honest. I've seen reports of some theaters with the screens and it playing next to them, and then you're just hearing Taylor Swift throughout the whole movie, which could very easily happen with it because it is one of the more quiet movies I've seen in theaters in a long time. It is very, very dialogue heavy. A lot of the dialogue is quieter. There's not even a score throughout a lot of the points of this movie. So that is my review. Thoughts on Killers of the Flower Moon. Be warned if you're going to watch it next to the Swift movie. Other note, I don't really have a bunch of notes for reviews on this, but The Killer is out on Netflix. It's David Fincher's new movie, starring Michael Fassbender. I thought it was really good, but it was a lot slower than I was expecting, but it is very well crafted. It still has good pacing throughout. It is not very action heavy, surprisingly, I felt like. But just the story that Fincher crafts and tells and how well Fassbender plays this character was really good. It's on Netflix. It's worth a watch before you cancel your Netflix subscription. So that's going to do it. I'm going to wrap up this episode. Hope you enjoy these mini reviews. If there's anything that you think I should check out or review, drop a comment on the YouTube video or on our Instagram page. Let us know. Try check it out. Do a mini review one of these months on it. Doesn't have to be musical related, obviously, as what we just did. But hope you're enjoying the content. Like, comment, share, all that stuff. Stay tuned for Newsies next week. And don't forget to go down once more. Later.